So, in April, I read 6 books, about 2,000 pages, and had some really good reads, but most importantly, I squeezed into the end of the month one of my new favourites for the year, and possibly one of my favourites, certainly in the top 5, top 10 favourite list at some point. But if you stick to the end of the video, you'll find out all about that book. Hi, my name is Matt, and welcome to Baskin the Story. Today we're going to go through my April wrap-up, and the first book I finished in April was The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. I really enjoyed this book. It starts very slowly. I'd say the first half is pretty ponderous. There's a lot of characters introduced, and it takes a while to get going. So it's a thriller, it's a crime thriller. What you've got is you've got a girl who's died decades before, and the patriarch of the family, of the Wagner family and the Wagner business, is trying to find out, before he passes, I suppose, trying to find out what happened to her, who killed her. And it's kind of a locked room mystery again. There's an island that they all live on. There was a big accident that cut off the island for a short while the girl went missing, and her body was never found. And this is now decades later, and he's hired Blomqvist, the journalist, a disgraced journalist. And that's another storyline that runs through the book. So you've got 2 storylines. You've got this investigation of the girl's murder, and you've also got the disgrace of this journalist and him trying to get his reputation back. So you've got those 2 storylines. You've also got another main character called Elizabeth, who is a wonderful character. She's, I think it says enigmatic on the back. Enigmatic, dangerous security specialist. Yeah, she's a bit of a genius, incredible computer with computers and hacking, can find a lot of details. She can see the world quite black and white. Both the main characters, Blomqvist and Elizabeth, are intriguing, to say the least, and pretty engrossing. They're certainly not your typical hero characters. They've certainly got some dark sides to them as well. So, as I said, the first half is slow. We meet a lot of people. We meet a lot of the Wagner family, which means you get a lot of characters, all with the same surname. And for me, that was a little bit confusing. So I had to take a bit of time to figure that out. But once you get through the first half, the second half is really good. The pace picks up, the plot thickens, and the danger and intrigue really ramps up. And the ending is so satisfying. It's a really satisfying conclusion to the mysteries. And I will be continuing this trilogy. It's a trilogy, a Millennium Trilogy. I will be continuing it because it was very good. You know, it was surprisingly, it wasn't the best read of the month, as I said, but it was a really good read. One thing to note is the original Swedish title of this book was Men Who Hate Women. And there is a fair bit of violence within it, and assault, and sexual abuse and violence. So if that triggers you, probably avoid this. Really good. As I say, I will continue with the series, and I'm looking forward to continuing that series as well. So we will pick up. The next one is The Girl Who Played with Fire, I think, is the next one in the series. So we'll pick that one up shortly, and I'll look to read that probably in a few months' time, once I've got it. Exceptional. We then had another crime book, which was an audio book, which I picked up, with Agatha Christie's Death on the Nile. I picked this up because MJ from Reading This Life was doing an Agatha in April, because she had never read Agatha, and she wanted to pick up the Queen of Crime and see what one of the biggest selling authors' work was like. I mean, Agatha Christie, I think, has sold in excess of 2 billion copies of her books, which is outrageous number. But I've read Agatha before, I've read a few. I've not read this one before. So this one is, you have a rich, beautiful socialite called Lynette, who gets murdered. And Hercule Poirot is there to try and solve the crime. Obviously, as you can guess, the crime takes place on the Nile in Egypt. The story itself, again, the first half, you're introduced to a huge range of characters. So similar to the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, you're introduced to a huge range of characters. You have Hercule Poirot, and he spends most of the first half of the book as, I would say, like a counsellor, a relationship counsellor especially, with a lot of the characters. But it gets you to know the characters, understand them a bit, understand their motives. Most of them are pretty despicable, or have certainly despicable elements to them, which is always enjoyable. The murder doesn't really happen until about halfway through. But what I'm always amazed by Agatha Christie books, and the reason why I assume she is called the Queen of Crime is her ability to write a story and a plot where she gives you all the evidence you could possibly want, and yet you still can't figure out who actually did it and how they did it. And then when you have the wrap-up at the end, you know, the typical Hercule Poirot performing his wrap-up of everything that happened, how it all interlinks, and how all the evidence comes together. It's just brilliant. And you go, yes, that's how it happened. Now I see, now I understand. So it was very enjoyable. You know, I'll probably pick up a few more Agathas in the future. She has a great skill in writing. I enjoyed the book, enjoyed the storyline, and the mystery is always great with Agatha, and you always get a really entertaining story and a great mystery. So that was a really good fun read. Then something different. I continued with my Discworld reading, so I'm on to finished Interesting Times. This is not one of my favourites, Pratchett books, and probably not one of my favourite Discworld novels, but it's good, it's entertaining. There are some stereotypes that feel a bit aged, if I'm honest, within it. But in this storyline, it's again Rincewind and the Wizards. They are off to the Agathian Empire, which seems to be, and this is where we get stereotypes, a mixture of Chinese and Japanese culture. There's still great satire in here. There's good satire around the revolutions and leadership and who's rebellions and who's leading rebellions, and are they really doing it for the people? And if they're going to lead the people, are the people really leading themselves? So there's some good stuff in there about that. I love the storyline of Cohen the Barbarian and his elderly crew, and that distinction between civilized people, civilized groups, and the barbaric groups. And actually, are the civilized groups more barbaric than the barbarians? Again, it's some really good points. Again, not my favourite. What I'm going to do is probably do a separate series on Discworld, because it is my favourite fantasy series. So I'm planning on doing a video series of the books in the Discworld, an introduction to them, and you know, the age-old question of where they start, and going through these books and, you know, looking at the fantastic information and detail that Pratchett can actually deliver on his view of the world and the universe and people and authority and religion and everything that's within it. So yeah, good read, not the best. Let's swiftly move to something completely different. You may remember, so last month I read East West Street, which I think I've got here. Yep, East West Street by Philip Sands, which is about the creation of the laws of crimes against humanity and genocide after the Second World War. And it sparked in me, one, that was one of my favourite non-fiction, probably my favourite non-fiction read of the year, but it sparked in me wanting to reread Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. This book, how do I describe it? It's emotional. It's fascinating insight into human character. So what you've got is the first half of this book is his experiences in the concentration camp and how man can find meaning in suffering and how one can survive through what seems like impossible suffering. And it's beautiful. And it's, you know, that first half is well worth, I would say, anybody to read. It's insightful on the condition of humanity and human nature. And then the second half is about so he's a psychotherapist. It is about his learnings put into practice and how to use them, which is interesting. But for me, the first half is where the real insights are. And it is, you know, that there's just so many bits in here that I would love to share with you. There's one quote or part of the book I wanted to read. So, it is apparent that the mere knowledge that a man was either a camp guard or a prisoner tells us almost nothing. Human kindness can be found in all groups, even those which, as a whole, it would be easy to condemn. The boundaries between groups overlapped, and we must not try to simplify matters by saying that these men were angels and those were devils. Certainly, it was a considerable achievement for a guard or foreman to be kind to the prisoners, in spite of all the camp's influences, and on the other hand, the baseness of the prisoner who treated his own companions badly was exceptionally contemptible. Obviously, the prisoners found the lack of character in such men especially upsetting, or they were profoundly moved by the smallest kindness received from any of the guards. So you've got that you can find kindness in groups of evil people, and nastiness in groups of good people. It's much more, so much grey in that world. And it led me to things of, the difference between the groups and the individuals from the East West Street book that I was mentioning about. Is it group, is it individual? Anyway, a fascinating read. I would recommend, if you haven't read it, it's really short. It's 150 pages. Thoughtful, considered, and meaningful. Okay, let's move on to the last two books, which are both sci-fi. The first one is The Three-Body Problem by Cixin. This book is first initially set in the 60s and the Chinese Cultural Revolution, and then moves to effectively the present day and events from the Cultural Revolution time and China and how they're impacting on events today. It's not political, however. That makes it sound a little bit political. It's not necessarily political. But what you've got is an investigation, a sort of military and police investigation into the class as a cabal of scientists who some have started to commit suicide, and there's no real explanation as to why. So they're looking into that and trying to understand what is happening. And there's basically a global risk to humanity that you uncover as you go along. And it's well done. It's really interesting. You explore a lot of problems or physics problems through sort of VR gaming. So you explore the three-body problem itself through VR gaming and a few others, which is fascinating. This is the first part of a trilogy, and I'm really interested to see where the next two books go, because I've heard that this is the weakest of the three. So there's an extinction level event or threat now facing humanity, but the way it's dealt with is really insightful. It actually sounds really realistic as to what might happen in that event and the build up to it. And I'm sure it'll be explored a lot more in the next two, which are the Dark Forest and Death's End, which I'll be picking up in the next couple of months. It was entertaining. If you like character development, this is not the book for you. There's not a huge amount of character development within it. There's a little bit, but not a huge amount. It's more about the ideas that are explored within this book. Now, there is a Netflix series coming out at some point this year. I'm not sure. There's also a Chinese series they've already done, but the Chinese series is 30 odd episodes long, something like that. It seems massively long. I've heard good things about it. I know someone in the comments of one of my previous videos, and I can't remember who, said that it was well worth watching, but it does seem particularly long for a book that's only 400 pages, 427 pages. So good, not excellent. Now, the excellent book I read or listened to, it was an audio book, was Hail Mary, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, performed by Ray Porter. This was exceptional, and I want to talk a lot about this book, but I really also don't want to say anything about this book because you really want to go into it knowing as little as possible. What can I say? It's one person's point of view, so one POV. You see a lot of monologue of his thoughts and processes in the book, which are humorous, intelligent, enticing and engrossing. It is absolutely brilliant. So you start off, basically this individual wakes in a bed, they're unable to move, they're not sure where they are, they can't even remember their name or who they are or why they are where they are. There's a sort of computer voice asking them a very mundane mathematical question, but they're struggling to speak, and that's how it starts. And you slowly over the book start to learn about who they are, where they are, what they're doing, how they ended up there, and it's brilliantly written. It's engaging the whole way throughout. There's so many twists and turns and sort of oh my god moments. It's brilliant, and the humour is excellent, and the ending is really emotional. It actually hit me, and I was surprised at how much it hit me towards the end. It's one of my new favourites. Does it knock Piranesi off its perch as the best book I read this year? They're very different books. No, probably not. Probably my second favourite book so far this year, I think. We'll see in the next few months once recency bias has sort of eased off a bit, but I think probably my second favourite, and certainly in my top 10 sci-fi of all time, possibly top 5. I have to think about that one, but it was brilliant. And if you're going to read it or listen to it, I would thoroughly recommend the audiobook, because Ray Porter's performance is brilliant, and the way he does the voices is exceptional. It's so good. So that was my favourite book of the month, and certainly one of my favourite books of the year. I'd say probably my second favourite book of the year. I haven't read any of Andy Weir. I've heard very good things about The Martian, and I've heard some poorer things about, is it Artemis, his other book? So a bit mixed. But I'll probably try and pick up The Martian, and again, if it's Ray Porter doing that voice, I'll probably listen to it through audiobook. But yeah, what a way to end the month. I just squeezed this in on the last day of the month. I managed to finish it. So good. Excellent read and a great way to finish the month. And now we're into May. So that's all the books I've read this month. Let's say 6 books. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope your April reading went really well, and I hope your May reading is going even better. And I look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Okay, bye.